go any further, but she starts and runs. Fantastic. I had to turn it off fairly quickly because I hadn't tightened one of the fuel lines. I must be going senile. I could also see a small drip of water, and when I pushed it, it turned out to be another hose that was gone. So before I drive this, I'm going to have to replace all the hoses. I reckon we can stop there. I'll go and read the manual a bit more, ready for tomorrow. Well, the next day started one of the coldest snaps we'd had all year, and it went for about a week. Of course, that was the time when all the lambs decided to be born. It's a bit like in the old days how they used to smack a baby on the backside to make them take their first breath. I think it's the same with a lamb. It drops out of a nice warm sheep onto a freezing cold ground and goes, "Bah!" And that's how it gets started. Serena played a part because a couple of the smarter lambs realised that she made a darn good windbreak. Well, eventually the sun came back and I was able to get started. Just as I did, I got a whole heap of visitors came flying in. These were mostly Corellas, with the odd sulphur-crested cockatoo. Cockies are not very well liked by farmers in Australia because they tend to come in their hundreds, particularly when the seeds have just been sown. In fact, our small farmers in Australia are called cockies because in the early days when they opened up the land for small farmers, the big landowners of the time found that there were small farmers everywhere and they said they were like cockatoos all across the land, and the name is stuck.
Have a trial with the cockies. You can take it straight from me. You'll very likely rue the day when you first saw Bungaree.
I started by replacing the fuel lines and the lighter water lines, and I used a heavy-duty fuel hose for this. Next I removed the radiator hoses. Some of them had vulcanised onto the metal and I had to actually cut them off. There are 4 radiator hoses, 2 front, 2 rear. The front ones weren't too bad to get off, but when I looked at the rear right-hand side one, I realised it could only be accessed by getting underneath. It was time to call for William. William is my old 1960s David Brown tractor. I'd found out earlier that I couldn't lift Serena with William, but I realised I didn't have to. I could actually use William to tow Serena up onto ramps, and that way I'd have enough room to manoeuvre underneath. Why is he called William? Well, where there's a will, there's a way, of course.
Way haul away, we'll haul away the bowling. Way haul away, we'll haul away down. Way haul away, we'll keep the passage rolling. Way haul away, we'll haul away down. Louis was the king of France before the Revolution. Way haul away, we'll haul away down. Then he got his head cut off and called the Constitution. Way haul away, we'll haul away down. When I was a little lad, my mother often told me, way haul away, Joe. But if I didn't kiss the girls, my lips would all go mouldy. Way haul away, Joe. Geordie Johnson had the piggy was just jointed. Way haul away, Joe. He took it to the blacksmith shop to have the chest pointed. Way haul away, Joe. Once I had an English girl, but she was fat and lazy. Way haul away, Joe. Now I got the German girl, she almost drives me crazy. Way haul away, Joe. Way haul away, we'll haul away together. Way haul away, Joe. Way haul away, we'll haul the dreadful weather. Way haul away, Joe.
Well, it let me get underneath, but I can see when I get under there that there are a lot of hoses that need replacing. They've all got that bulgy, soft, squelchy look about them, and the one I want to get to is really well hidden. I've put a little peephole in from the top, but it's so small you can't really get in with anything. In the end, I had to get in with a screwdriver and chop the pipe because it was just welded onto the metal. And it took me 3 hours to finally get the thing off. Well, 3 hours to get one hose off is just about done for my enthusiasm for the day. We'll do some more tomorrow. Having removed the hoses I wanted to replace, I now had to identify them and find a supplier. I suppose this would be a problem for any 25-year-old car, as Serena's now officially classified as vintage. Online information was confusing to say the least, as the radiator hoses that were the same as what I'd taken off were listed on most sites as for the diesel, whereas the one they listed for Serena was quite different. I eventually found a supplier who seemed to know what I needed. Like all the others though, they only listed the front hoses that connect to the radiator. These join a steel section which ends in rubber hoses at the engine end. After hours of trying to find these back hoses, I went to see a mechanic friend who works at AutoPro. After some time spent scrabbling through boxes in the storeroom, we found a hose that with a bit of work should be possible to cut down and replace both back hoses. Now all I have to do is wait for the weather to improve so that I can get back to the job.